Let me now introduce our session moderator for the day, Ms. Ritu Maurya, Editor-in-Chief of Entrepreneur India and Asia Pacific. Our panelists today are Sharat Sachdeva, Director of Operations, Elk Carters in Asia; Ashish Dev Kapoor, Founder and Director, Moods Hospitality Private Limited; Indrajit Singh Bagga, Curator and Promoter, Prankster and Pirates of Grill; Unnat Verma, MD, Pizza Hut Asia Pacific; Varun Kapoor, Executive Director, K Hospitality Corp; Chef Atul Kochar, Michelin star chef and restaurateur; Sahil Jain, co-founder, Dine Out. I would now request Ms. Maurya to start the session. Over to you, Ms. Maurya.
Thank you, Pratima, and thank you to all the panelists for joining us today for this discussion on the impact of the restaurant industry and COVID-19, and also to our attendees for joining us today. We have, of course, seen the lockdown for the last 10 days, which has been more visible, but I think the restaurant industry started feeling the entire impact of COVID since the beginning of March, when the vibrations of COVID and its impact on the business was coming to be seen, with numbers in people visiting to the restaurants becoming less. And of course, needless to say that no operator in the restaurant industry is going to get out of this unscathed, whether it is a neighborhood restaurant operator or whether it is going to be the world's largest restaurant chain. They would all feel the impact of COVID-19 to some large or big extent. Of course, now I would say if the three things that everybody would need to be mindful at this stage in the restaurant industry, it would be the cash, customer, and the employees. And it's really, the discussion today is going to be how are we going to hold on to our best assets and to our best resources that we have, and make full use of it as we go forward in the coming days once the lockdown opens up. Before we proceed, I would like to give a small ode to a friend that we have lost due to COVID-19, which is Chef Lloyd Cardoz of Bombay Canteen. Indeed, it's a big loss for the entire industry, because the kind of things and experimentations that he was bringing to food in India was totally out of the world. And today he's not here. We would like to show you a small video just to give us 1 minute ode to him. Well, as we go forward, the discussion today is really going to be in 4 parts. Firstly, we will try to see what is the impact of the COVID-19 on the restaurant industry currently, and how exactly and what effects have we seen already because of COVID. In the second part of the discussion, we will talk about how do we take best management of our resources, whether it is our human resources or whether it is our financial resources, our assets, or our customers whom we don't want to lose once the business is really open. The third part of our discussion would be more on recovery. What is it that we are expecting we would have in place, and what is it that we expect from the government, and how are we going to, or what sort of changes are we putting together now which will help us in a better recovery as we go forward in the industry. And the final part, we will also like to involve our audience, wherein they will be asking questions from our very, very insightful panelists about what are they feeling or what are they going through in the restaurant industry. So let me start with the first segment of the discussion, which is the impact on the restaurant industry. Indeed, the sales have dropped for the restaurant sector like it has never ever happened before. And I think particularly for restaurant chains, which are not just in India but global, the impact has even been bigger and wider, because different countries have been seeing the impact of COVID coming differently. So Unnat, I'm going to put this question to you. At Pizza Hut, what is the larger impact that you have seen because of the business, particularly for your sales, particularly in your people? And I would want you to discuss both the qualitative and the quantitative changes that you have already begun to see in the restaurant sector.
Thank you, Ritu, and a very warm welcome to all the other panelists here. on this fantastic forum. Good afternoon, all the participants. I see we have a pretty large bunch, and that's growing. It's 131 in number and growing, so a lot of interest in the subject. I run the Asia Pacific business for Pizza Hut that consists of 21 countries, and then of course we have a view of what's happening with the Pizza Hut world outside of these 21 countries. What we've seen is that overall the behavior towards eating out has taken a massive beating. So our customers or our guests are going out far lesser as compared to before. Now we have our brand has different kinds of executions in different markets. In some markets or some countries, we are a pure dine-in play where we have seen a huge negative impact on sales. On the other end of the spectrum, we have countries where we have a pure home service play, where we have delivery and carry out as a substantial part of our business. Over there, we've seen a double-digit growth in business. So clearly, as consumers are staying at home, going out lesser, but the need for consuming outside food has always been there, and now it is manifesting itself into consumers wanting to order from home. We are seeing that particular behavior fairly consistently across the geographies. So markets like, I'll just take a few markets: Japan, Korea, Taiwan, New Zealand, Australia, etc. These are markets where we have a predominantly, home meal replacement business, as we call it. Over there, we are seeing consistently a double-digit growth. So if your business is targeted towards the home meal replacement segment, then I think these times will provide for an increased opportunity in sales. And clearly, if your business is dependent totally on customers leaving their homes, getting into a shopping mall to access your brands or your stores or any other place, then of course there are going to be huge headwinds coming out of that.
Sure, thanks, Unnat. Now we also have, as restaurant industry also works with large franchise partners and business partners when it comes to our expansion. Now, what changes or what franchise partners feeling today across the, so Unnat, maybe you can take, how franchise partners are trying to cope with the impact across the world, while I would like for Ashish and Indrajit to come on to talk about, how they are trying to cope up with their franchise partners in India.
Thank you, Ritu. So very similar to what we are seeing on the impact on sales, right? So wherever the sales are growing on the back of home delivery and carry out business, our franchise partners today are having to manage. There are different kinds of challenges, right? Just to get employees to come to the store, keep the store open, get the right number of people to be attended every day. Those are the challenges that are happening right now in keeping the stores open to cater to the consumer demand. Wherever the business is taking a beating, like we are seeing in more dine-in heavy markets, where we have more restaurant business, India being one of them, we have clearly a situation where there is a challenge on cash flows at this point of time. So basically, we have recommended a framework for our franchise partners, which we are calling the 4C framework. And the 4Cs that I'd like to share here with the attendees here, there are 4 parts to a framework. The first one is called care for employees. So whatever you do, just start caring for the employees first. Put your arms around them, whether you have to make sure that you have to, pick them up from their homes and get them across to the stores to keep your stores running. Or if your stores are shut and your employees have to be at home, just make sure that they don't lose the opportunity to keep earning their salaries and they keep enjoying the benefits in terms of the medical insurance and stuff like that. So both the things are happening under the pillar of care for employees. The second pillar is what we call as care for customers, where we are saying the customers are now extremely sensitive about the brands they're dealing with and how the brands are interacting with them from a safety aspect. We were the pioneers to launch contactless delivery in China. Something that has become now a buzzword with the food service industry around the world was pioneered by Pizza Hut in China within the first week of the launch of COVID there. And that basically entails that you have orders that are pre-placed and you're not doing any cash transactions. And there is at least a 2 to 3 meter distance between the rider who's coming and delivering the food to you and the customer who's coming and picking it up. So that is something that we have seen work really well. And now we are looking at implementing that in our carry-out business, which is substantial in some parts of the world, as well as in the context of dine-in. Now, we haven't seen too much of a technology usage in restaurants at this point of time, but there are some thoughts in terms of why should customers be handling menu cards or interacting with crew in the stores to take care of payments. Why can't the entire thing be taken over by technology? So we're looking at some of these initiatives under the care for customer pillar. Under care for business pillar, we are looking at how do you keep the momentum going, identify the opportunities of sustaining your business or at least minimizing the negative impact of business by looking at specific areas of opportunity and focusing on that. So for example, corporate catering becomes an area of opportunity at this point of time as generally cities shut down, but if a few corporates are open to keep the business going, is that an area of opportunity? And there are some specific areas like this as we think about our business. And the fourth very, very important pillar for us is care for community. There are people who are doing a thankless job of taking care of the affected people, not just the healthcare workers in hospitals, but also volunteers who are giving shelter, who are giving a lot of support to the affected patients. And how do brands like ourselves come and just say thank you to the people who are at this point of time putting their own life at risk for the benefit of the society? So we have shared this particular framework with our franchise partners across the region. It's care for employees, care for customers, care for business, and care for community. And we are supporting in some markets where franchisees are affected or are impacted. We are looking at ways and means of selectively and individually talking about various levers that we have in the business to help them tide over this crisis period.
Sure. Thanks, Sunil. Let me come to you, Indrajit. I mean, you're already working with franchise partners. Ashish, you already have franchise partners. So how are you working with them, or what kind of advice are you giving to them on a personal level as well as at an organizational level to help them get through this better? Right?
Ashish, would you want to take that first, or should I take it first?
Go ahead, please, Indra.
Okay. So I think largely I'm happy to understand that a large corporation like Pizza Hut is almost also following the similar principles as what we are following, right? I think at this point of time, compassion, right communication, relationship management are going to be the critical key areas, right, for any two entities to survive between them. So, for example, for us as a homegrown brand with almost like 15 stores across India and 3 of them being franchisees, as business owners, we have first taken up the owners, brand owners, we've taken up the owners to first give leverages to our franchisees by telling that, our monthly royalty fees and all of those things can be looked into at a very, very later stage, right? We could look at minimizing them out, right? But the first critical thing right now is for the franchise store to survive and the employees who are working there under the periphery of the brand, right, to not feel insecure. So we always, given them the assurance that, we'll be giving them a support as an organization, whatever we can. But please make sure that the people who have been working with us for a long duration of time, they get their minimum salaries being paid, right? So that at least everybody's, housed. See, at this point in time, my critical understanding is this: business and humanity have to work together, right? And if we lose humanity and only take business decisions, we might end up, losing the business as well in the long run. So taking care of the employees is going to be critically important for us. We've asked the franchise to make sure that minimum wages are being paid to all of them, right? We will support them in whatever senses we can. That's the second thing that we've looked into. Third is that when the cash flow starts opening, whenever the stores keep opening up, right? As an organization, because we've got a corporate structure in place, we're already looking forward to how would we be enticing out newer mechanisms for the consumer to come back to our franchise stores as well, right? As much as we would want our original stores, our company-owned stores to survive, the franchise would also, do something on be felt on the similar lines, right? So these are few of the things that we as an organization are trying to work.
So Ashish, also the fact that you run a lot of large format restaurants, and their impact is going to be bigger than, let's say, a mid-sized restaurant, or let's say a small smaller size restaurants. So what are your ways, and how are you feeling that impact, and what are you looking to do about it?
So Ritu, you're right. I mean, the typical size of our stores is about 5,000 square feet, employ about 70 odd people per store. So these are large format 150-seater stores. we evaluated the opportunity of looking at delivery as a segment, and then very quickly figured that the DNA was very different from a fine dine setup and a large setup, and secondly, the entire setup from a cost basis wouldn't make sense for a 5,000 square foot store or with large kitchens of 1,000 square feet plus to really service delivery, especially when it had never been done and the DNA wasn't set. So I think the current challenge is really to protect the employees that are there. We've obviously had them dispersed all over the country, but at the end of the day, I think it's about today reaching out to them on a daily individual basis and just making sure that whatever little timely help that can be given is given. From a business angle and a non-humanitarian angle, I think there are two kinds of losses or cash flow losses that we need to be prepared for as an industry. One is really the cash loss while we are shut. You talked about revenues being impacted. In our case, there's zero revenue as an industry. So it's not about really being impacted. It's zero revenue, cost structure existing with zero revenue. So how do you account, or how do you have cash flow to sustain while you are shut? That is one set of cash flow issues. The second is, what do you do and how much money do you really require to restart as well as sustain for at least a year, because it's not really going to run away till a year. So, most of us work, usually the restaurant industry prides itself on a negative working capital. So we buy on credit and we receive payments immediately. We have a 60-day working capital cycle. But what happens when that entire cycle comes to an immediate stop and people have to be paid upfront? So I think there's going to be a huge cash flow requirement once businesses have to restart. And there's going to be a lot of strain on cash flow while we are shut, and then while we have to open, and then what we require to sustain for the next 1 year. So I think the ecosystem needs to come together. Even when it comes to franchise partners, for example, we can give as much emotional support as we want, but reality is that we are a much smaller cost center for them. We can come in emotionally, but the reality is it's really the government and the landlords, which are the bulk of the cost structure for the industry. So unless, like Atul was pointing out, unless like in the UK, you have the government stepping in and landlords stepping in, your ecosystem hasn't really come together to support the survival of the business through the tough times.
Sure. Thanks for that,
I can
Ashish.
add a little bit to the same thing as Ashish is saying, because Ashish and my problems are entirely very similar, right? We are a very homegrown organization where Ashish being an entrepreneur, me being an entrepreneur, we started from a scratch, right? And we built an organization over a period of time. Now we don't have the support of or the luxury of any fund house supporting us, right, or any equity money or my father's money supporting me at this point of time, right? As self-made entrepreneurs, right, Ashish very rightly said, we need the whole ecosystem and plus our own savings to come into the picture, right? Our employees need to understand that we are there for them, right? But we need their support. The government has to support us, and then we also have to have a large heart to look into our savings and put them everything on the table to make sure that somehow we all sustain this.
Sure. No, I completely agree with you. And also that brings me to the very important part, which is the second part where we actually get into discussion of all the areas that you have mentioned, which is how do we manage now here on, having seen this big impact and felt this big impact, how do we manage our best resources together so that when we actually get out of the lockdown, we are more ready to be able to meet up the challenges that are going to face us and the huge expenses as well as no income situation that is going to face us as we get started. So my first question to you would be, how are we working on making rent deferrals or rent relaxations, and how are we sort of going together as a community to talk to the developers so that we are able to bring down one of the most significant costs that we have in our business, which is the cost of rentals. So what is it that you're doing together or working together with the developers to get that down? So let me start with you. Varun, are you there now?
Yes, we do. Hi.
Okay, Varun. So let me start with you in terms of, particularly you have stores at all airports. You also have stores in malls and standalone locations. So what is the strategy that you have put forward to get rent relaxations or rent deferrals?
Yes. I think, to rightfully you said, things like airports and malls, you saw sometimes were the first places to get hit by this thing, considering, the large areas of people gathering. And by that logic, they probably are places that will take the longest to recover from this, in terms of people getting comfort and ultimately traveling out or whether congregating in malls. I mean, it honestly holds true even for places on high street locations. It will take time. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. And I think we all do realize that. At the same point, I think it is essential that this industry does survive. There is zero revenue coming in. And I think every landlord you talk is of the same opinion. While, yes, in the short term, there are cash flow mismatches, I think every landlord wants to give that support. Now, where that support is, I think it's crucial that we, as an industry, band together and communicate the effects it's happening on everyone and the seriousness. I think people do understand the seriousness, but just that it's something where we have obviously employees. There's zero revenue coming in. It is, I think Rashish mentioned, we're used to negative working capital. In this scenario, all the expenses are hitting us up front. There's honestly nothing coming in. The dilemma won't happen for some time going forward. So it's important we band together. We approach the landlords jointly, and we seek those rebates because those are not essential for making numbers look better as normally you would negotiate. You're not in losses. This is a question of pure survival. And therefore, I think restaurants having that conversation with our landlord partners, because in the end, if the restaurant industry is not there, it's what drives traffic to places like malls. And if that piece ultimately goes missing or considerably weakens, that whole industry would be affected in the long term. So yes, it's a question of all of us taking that pressure. Zero revenue for us. We ask our landlord partners to also bear with us at that time. I think the government on the EMI front has given the support. I know, which was a big concern when we.
So we seem to have lost Varun there. Chef Atul Kochhar, if you can add to this, how in UK are restaurants coming together, and particularly, leading fine dining, large format restaurants? How are you talking there to the mall developers to see rent relaxations?
So just on the government front, I'll talk a bit about that. That government came out supporting the entire country, and especially the hospitality and the leisure sector, saying that you need to talk to the government, to the landlords on individual basis, but there will be no evictions until next March, I think. So that has kind of given a big relief. And I have 4 restaurants, and we have straight away went to all the landlords, and everyone just sees the rents immediately, all frozen until situation improves. Some of them have said we'll do it on month-to-month basis and see how it comes back, because it's in their interest that our shops are open. Nobody would like to put us out of the business, because if we are out of the business, it's just not me this time, it's everybody across the country, across the globe. So it's in landlords' interest to hold our hands and work with us. So that support, I think, is going to be in everyone's interest worldwide, let alone UK. On the humanitarian side, in spite of having support from the government has pitched in 80% of the salary of the employees, going up till 2,500 per month. That has been a major relief. Most of us have agreed to top up another 20% and make sure that they have comfort and also the confidence that their employers are the right ones to look after them. Stressing on humanitarian, I think most of the restaurants are closed, and some of the larger restaurants have come out with delivery format, which is kind of working, but everyone is quite skeptical. So it was really interesting to hear Unnat talk about cashless or the contactless deliveries. I think that's the way forward in the current scenario, and it's going to be there for quite some time to come. I think everyone has to learn from that.
Sure.
Not only for providing food, not only for NHS, which is the most important thing for us at the moment here, but also we have lots of homeless people. I know in terms of Magnum, we are nothing compared to India's problem, but whatever we have, because of the adverse weathers we have, to house them has been a major challenge. So all the hotels have opened up, all the motels, everything has opened up and housed whosoever they could house and looking after them. And restaurateurs like us, we are preparing food and kind of delivering it to these hotels and all the old age homes where we can give our support. So that's been one major thing. No cash coming, that's universal, guys. Nothing we can do about it.
So let me ask this question here. Do you think there is an opportunity for restaurants today to look at food delivery from their stores more like as grocery stores, function as grocery stores? I mean, that would be good for a social cause perspective and also probably add to some business side. I mean, I know it's happening in the US already where they've quickly converted their restaurants into grocery delivery and food delivery as well. Do you see at all an opportunity like that can be seen as a low-hanging fruit?
Ritu, I think whether you are a multi-unit restaurateur or you are a holder of 3 Michelin star, everyone is going to take a dig at that market now. Even when the world comes to normal, that is going to be the norm. Whether we like it or not, that's the way it's going to be. So the delivery space and the and corporate dining, which Unat quite rightly pointed out, I think most of us would be going after that segment, which was kind of looked after by specialists only. But it's not only low-hanging fruit; it's the way forward. That's how we will we'll try to recoup some of our lost revenues. Stroke part of our balance sheet or part of our revenue structure would be based on the deliveries. That is the way forward. Whether we like it or not, we have to do it.
Sharad, if you're there, can you, I mean, you probably in your portfolio seen some companies in China who have already sort of, been finished with the impact of COVID to a very large extent and now are recovering back. So what is it that you are seeing in terms of Chinese trends that the whole world can learn from them?
I think there are these 3 stages to this big problem or whatever we are facing currently across the world. The first one was the normal that we were kind of facing, which was the normal life which we had. Then there was this new normal, which basically talks about which we are in right now, about safeguarding our lives and our livelihoods. This is the new normal which we are facing day in, day out in the current situation. And then I think there'll be a next normal where there'll be massive restructuring of economic and social order in which behaviors and businesses and societies have to traditionally kind of operate and rethink and rejig the entire working situation. As we have been facing problems in India, there is the other side of the hump that our current few portfolio companies are in China. To start with the rent reductions, China was the first one. They never knew how things are and what they should do with the retailers that we have there. They started approaching in a very haphazard manner with the landlords, and landlords were initially not listening, but eventually they understood the massivity and the severity of the problem, and they were empathetic with the retailers, and they could understand the problem, and they heard and they kind of cooperated. So in most cases, we got about 100% rent waiver for the 3 months that we started talking to them. But then we thought that business is not going to be normal immediately after the situation comes back to the next normal that I'm talking about. So we kind of bundled it up in such a way that 3 months full rent waiver and then another 2 months 50% or whatever. So mostly we got success there, and 80% of the landlords were good enough and big enough to kind of understand the situation, and others followed, and we were able to do that. On the other aspect, which everybody in the forum is talking about, the employees and how empathetic and understanding are we towards the employees. You have to take it in a very pragmatic manner. You have to safeguard your business when it opens or reopens, and you have to also take care of the people. And it also comes from the culture that we live in. Indians are very emotional, and we take mostly emotional decisions because we are brought up like that. And but Chinese in that aspect are not that emotional, so I will give that due to them. So manpower was part of it asked to go, part of it asked to go on long paid leaves, and some of them were retained. That was the second aspect. And as now things are coming to normal and a lot of places are opening up, lockdowns are finishing. Even in Wuhan, I hear there are times, and they've started opening the lockdown. We don't have a massive business in Hawaii, and I would not be able to talk much about it. But if you're talking about big metros and bigger shopping centers and bigger metros, business is not normal. People are still afraid because, as I don't know, people say there are the problem that China is showing is still not what the actual situation on ground is. So people are still kind of wary of going out and eating out and shopping and stuff. So business is not normal. While there is traction from the initial thing, and as I said, that we are trying to bundle up the next 2 months at a cut down rentals. So business is not good. We are managing. Cash flows are severely hampered. As Ashish said, we're not facing less sales. We are facing zero revenue. Zero revenue means zero revenue, and there are costs. There are bills to be paid, other than the ones we can negotiate. But revenue is zero. So unprecedented times, and China, if we go back to, things might take longer than we think. It might be 6 months, maybe 9 months, that we see traction coming back like before. Maybe after that, you can see unprecedented growth, never before like growth, because sentiment is very poor right now and things are looking very, very somber. And I think in the times to come, we should hope, and I think things will turn better.
Sure. So this is a quick question to everybody. Do you think, I mean, I know you have been all sort of talking about the social aspect and, let's be humanitarian, but as Sharad has pointed out, do you think India is ready for a situation to put their employees on furlough? Ashish, Indrajit, Varun?
Furlough, when you say furlough, are you talking about paid, unpaid? What exactly?
Unpaid.
Unpaid. I think Ritu, it's all a question of seeing how this plays out, and it's best to let it play out rather than making decisions now. If it's a question of a month, obviously everybody will support staff. If it's 2 months, some will be able to. If it's 3 months, lesser will be able to. So I think there's no point creating panic between staff and restaurant owners. The reality is the first effort is to protect staff, no questions. But what happens if a company just runs out of cash flow? What do you do then? So I think it's all a race against time and figuring out when it happens. I think the intent here is bigger than the reality. The intent is that employees before anything else, before landlords, before supply chain. And I think as long as the intent is honest, then hopefully, we'll all find a way out of this. Sure. And I have to also, just add one more thing. I think it's been incredible how we've seen as an industry, even employees support the various businesses that they are a part of.
We've lost Ashish there. Varun, you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, to know, I think
willing.
Ashish, we're losing you, so we'll come back to you again in a minute.
No, I think just maybe probably finishing Ashish's thought. I think
senior levels agreed to haircuts, and junior levels more sustainable over.
We give him a chance to connect, but I think it's probably a bit. But no, I'll
okay,
just.
Varun, we can have you on.
Yeah, just finishing Ashish's thought. I think what he said is very exactly. I think what probably everyone here is thinking. Top of the agenda is the employees, and I think the issue is as this does prolong, it puts more and more challenges. And I think everyone is taking it day by day. No one knows where this is going. It's not a scenario where an economic cycle you have any sort of prior data to look at and see what others have done. It's something we're looking at day in, day out, how to do, taking decisions day in, day out, with the intention of supporting. I mean, things like health insurance, things like that providing. So we've, a lot of us are doing that. I know for a fact, going out, doing that extra bit, providing extra health insurance. For example, we've done that. We've doubled it for a lot of the employees at the lower level this year, considering the challenges that will play out. And I think those are probably the best things that, with whatever limited knowledge is available, we can do. And we're just bringing on something like delivery. It was mentioned. A lot of people say that, delivery is an avenue to recover. Today, for most of us in the F&B industry, it's a 90-10. 90 eat-in, 10 delivery. Even right now, everything is zero. Even if you do say in the long-term delivery recovers, we're all hoping for the 10. I'm hearing that it can quadruple at some point. That's still a 40. 90 will be zero, probably at best, a little bit trickles in. We're still looking at business halving, and our economics are based on certain areas, certain team strengths, which can't be changed overnight. And an industry that touches 7 to 10 million people of employment, even if you're talking business halving, you're talking a very scary scenario to think about. So therefore, there is that support that's required externally, that is needed to help tide over. And it is something that we're hopeful that it sees some recovery after some point. But it does pose, I think, in the short term, at least surely, some structural challenges for the business, because we can't change the way we operate overnight. These are more long-term changes that may be needed. And we're hopeful those are not required, and the business, industry can bounce back in that point in time.
Sure. There's Sahil also, who's there with us from Dine Out. So Sahil, how do you see technology changing things? I mean, understandably, online reservations would be slow even in the times to come, even when the lockdown is open. So as a technology company, how are you looking at things to get better post-lockdown?
Right. So I think how everyone spoke about that, this is not really a 2 or 3 month sort of a situation we're looking at, and it's like a prolonged, let's say 6 to 9 month situation. And what we believe is probably the new normal, right? This is how consumers are going to behave, and we'll have to adjust to this new reality where we think technology will become extremely important. And that's where we think that our B2B side of business, where we've been developing a lot of software for restaurant partners, is going to come in even more handy. And looking at China and other parts globally, we think stuff like pre-ordering their food is going to be extremely important, right? So now, because of social distancing, if people are going to spend lesser time or want to spend lesser time inside a restaurant, the idea that they can pre-order and spend, let's say, 10, 15 minutes lesser inside the restaurant might gain some sort of traction and build more consumer confidence from a consumer perspective, because then they know that they're going to spend lesser time. And also we know from China that, government has imposed certain restrictions, like, keeping restaurants full by only half, like only 50% or 60% occupancy. So managing that wait list is going to become important, right? So restaurants will have to start adopting that technology to build that consumer confidence or care for the customer side, which Unnat spoke about, where they can say that, hey, we care for you and we're keeping the restaurant, let's say, only half full right now as a part of social distancing. We're enabling pre-ordering for you so that you don't need to spend 45 minutes inside, maybe only 25 minutes inside. Come in when the food is ready, so that, they can practice more social distancing and get more revenues coming in. So I think restaurants will have to start investing in that technology, which I think is good anyways for the long run, because it helps them build more revenue and, cuts the costs and makes it more efficient. And essentially, I think what this is going to force restaurants also to do, and is forcing us, like, every startup today who is cash crunched is looking at its cost structures massively, right? We're looking at each and every cost line item to see where is it that we can bring in efficiency. And actually, when we look at it, we realize there are a lot of non-essential things that we were spending on, which could have actually been reduced from our P&L, but we never focused on it, right? So simple questions like, even on the manpower side, like, we do have the human side of it where we are protecting jobs, but in the long run, how can we make our manpower more efficient, right? So let's say if a restaurant has today 2 purchase managers, right? Can we bring that down to just 1 purchase manager and maybe automate stuff on the purchase side, right? By using a software or technology where I can automate my purchases or my supply chain management, right? Similarly, on the in-restaurant experience, if, like Unnat mentioned, if I'm using digital menus or my smartphone as a menu where I can just scan a QR code and get my menu on the phone, so there's no involvement of touching a physical menu, and then can I order from there, and again bring in more efficiency in terms of in-restaurant ordering management with a automated kitchen system, and maybe let's have 20% lesser waiters, then automatically I'm reducing my cost structure, right? So I think with this 2 or 3 month period, I think restaurateurs also will look long and hard at their cost structures and think that as a part of the new normal, how do they reset their businesses and figure out to do things more efficiently, let's say using technology, or even reducing manpower and doing things a little bit differently in terms of the SOPs, etc. I think all of that is going to be reset, not just for the restaurateur, but for every company out there, whether it's a startup, whether it's an online aggregator, whether it is anybody, right? So I think that is something which we'll all have to adjust to and figure out how do we do this in the long run, because I think it's here to stay, at least for a year, like everyone said.
Sure. So now let me come down to also my last segment of discussion, which is on the recovery side. I know we've been making some noise on how the government can support us, but I mean, honestly, and this is a question to all of you, how can the government really support us? What is it? We can want 100 things from the government, but what is it that reasonably the government can give us, and we can make sure that, between the government of India and the restaurant sectors, there could be a good connection that could be made, wherein everybody sort of gets a win-win. Who would like to take this? So Chef, let me ask you, what is the UK government first giving to the restaurants out there? I think that could be a reasonable ground for Indian to ask from the Indian government a few things.
The way government started here, they obviously said that all the furlough employees, first, the problem didn't hit us until middle of March. Before that, we were quite relaxed about it, whether it'll come here or not come here. We were obviously watching Italy fall down quite badly, but slowly we realized that everyone is going to be engulfed in this. So I think we have a criticism that government was slow to react to contain the whole thing. But I think the financial package which they came back with was quite good. We have been very appreciative of what has been done here in the UK. So from the employment front, government immediately supported restaurant and leisure industry with 80% of the wages. They have cancelled all the what we have business rates up till next year, which has been a huge relief, because it comes down to approximately good, as a thumb rule, it's good 12 to 15% of your revenue goes into the rates, business rates, which we call the council tax in the household terms. And then VAT payments and the pay we call it, that has been suspended for some time. We will accrue them, but we are not liable to pay them partially this year and more of next year, to be honest, which is a big relief to us. And then government came also to support in terms of landlords, and they kind of have been directly stroke indirectly been told that they would have to support the business, and most of the landlords have actually agreed to that. Especially, I can only talk mainly about London. Most of them are corporate landlords, pension funds, banks, and businesses. The rental, at least for London, the average ticket is approximately 200,000 per annum. So to be able to have a breather out of that is actually a big relief to us. How we come out of it is going to be the biggest thing. Government hasn't come back saying that what else will be given. There's another thing which government has given to most of the small businesses, a grant of 10 to 25,000 if your business has the rateable value of below 51,000. For small businesses and most of the restaurants on the periphery of London, they would have rateable value below that. For them, it's a massive relief, because if you have to support your workforce, that 25,000 will go a long way. So as an entrepreneur, I have kissed goodbye to my earnings for this year, that's for sure. So I wouldn't be taking any money home. But the bigger relief would be that, can I pitch up and also put my savings on the table and support all my staff I have, because this is the time that we can be with them and be there for them, because they have been there for me. That's been the biggest thing. And in the coming times, as we go forward and spiral down through this problem, it's your workforce that will see you through. So looking after them is the primemost thing on our minds.
Any thoughts, Unnat? What is it that the Singapore government is offering to the restaurant industry?
See, so far in the geography here, there has been, so Singapore government, of course, has of late announced a slew of measures. And those measures are targeted towards the middle segment and the lower segment of the society. So it covers a lot of, daily wagers, taxi drivers, delivery riders. There is a certain minimum grant that comes into their bank accounts. I don't remember the exact figures, but that's the way Singapore government has announced a certain support. The issue is not Singapore actually. The issue in the region here is markets that have gone into a complete lockdown. So, like in India, where there has been a complete, almost a curfew-like situation in the whole country, where all the restaurants have had to shut down, and very few are open at this point of time. We have a couple of markets in the region. So, New Zealand is in a 4-week complete lockdown. And the government in New Zealand has assured all employers that their respective employees will get 100% of their wages of the last 4 weeks average wages. Right now, because in the PNL, actually in the restaurant industry, PNLs in countries like Australia and New Zealand, the cost of labor tends to be the highest number. Anything between 35 to 50% of the PNL gets consumed because of cost of labor. So if the government takes care of that biggest element in the PNL, I think it's a substantial support for the
Sorry about that.
entrepreneurs. No problem. In other places, in more developing nations like Philippines has had a pretty significant shutdown, and Malaysia is going through it. The government is yet to announce very specific programs, but my sense is that as long as they can take care of the middle rung and particularly the bottom end of the pyramid in terms of the population segments, I think overall the machinery can keep chugging along. I fully agree with Chef Atul when he says that it's a very tough year and entrepreneurs will have to mentally be prepared for a year of zero earnings in 2020. Sadly, but very, very true. What other support we can expect government of India to provide to us? I think the lines of the PNL are very different in India. Taxation and rentals seem to be the two biggest lines. So I fully agree that some tax deferrals and not just nudging, but actually having a short-term policy for the overall real estate sector to keep your shops open and chugging along as the economy comes back. And until the economy comes back to a certain level of the original performance, helping the overall industry to overcome this tough situation could be a very good form of support government could provide.
Let me ask one final question before we open for discussion with audience. Sharad, this one is for you. Now, as a fund, do you see erosion of the value of your portfolio companies coming out of this? And I mean, to what extent are you sort of already putting that in perspective? And also, do you see this as an opportunity to buy some distressed assets in the market? So as a fund, what lenses have you got on right now?
So, Ritu, basically, like every business, we are also seeing a massive amount of erosion and in the value proposition or the valuation. And it's anybody's guess by the end of the tunnel what would be the magnitude of that erosion would be. As we stand today and as we see things, everybody will tend to agree with me, we don't see anything. And it's just that there is a deep darkness ahead. I don't know how long, I don't know how much, but to answer you, there is going to be a lot of erosion in the assets, needless to say, and the magnitude will be ascertained in due course of time, and then there'll be measures taken to kind of minimize the loss, innovate things around it, see how the damages can be delayed or dealt with. So that is one aspect, and I don't have the answer on the amount of erosion would it be and how much it would be, because we don't know the time. And time is directly proportional to the amount of erosion. The second part of your question is, will it be an opportunity to, at the right time, to see into, you see, as cold as it may sound, PE funds will obviously look for distressed assets, and any given point in time, we are looking for opportunities. I wouldn't be very happy to say that at the end, when things are turning out to be normal, as I said, the next normal, there will be opportunities, there will be assets to be seen. Unfortunately, F&B or a hospitality as a sector has been under various stress for various reasons, from government perspective, GST, employee, changing facets and fads and this, that, and the other, focus of dine-in to deliveries and so on and so forth. So there has been many opportunities in the past also. With this kind of or the pandemic of this magnitude will definitely have a far more negative impact on the companies in the market, and will open up a lot of opportunities. It is very unfortunate for me to be talking like this, but yes, we will be looking at with a different lens, and we will see what comes out on the other side of this huge issue that we are all facing. So I think yes, we will look at, and as I said, as that is our bread and butter, we would look at different assets, be it hospitality, be it retail, or be it healthcare, or so on and so forth. While healthcare isn't in bad shape at the moment, and is probably one of the booming industry at this point in time, like media is. So yes, to answer you, I think I've covered both aspects.
Sure. So now I'm opening the discussion with our audience also. I see that we've got about 161 participants. 15 questions are already on the board. So we're looking out for some interesting questions out there. So Mr. Harpreet Singh has a very interesting question. If we can give him the audio, please. Chirag, can you give the audio to Mr. Singh?
Yeah, hi. Good afternoon, everyone. So a major question that I had was that how are we going to deal with the excise departments regarding all the licenses and everything? Because a huge part of our industry does include a lot of bars and restaurants. I personally, we run a place in Gurgaon, actually two of them, and we have liquor licenses on both our places. So the problem is with that is that already the formalities and all the issues regarding to renewals and everything are very stringent, especially in Haryana. Along with that, at this point, getting the renewals is extreme. It seems almost impossible. And so how are we looking to deal with that as a community is what I would like to know.
Can I answer that for you, Harpreet?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So as the NRAI Gurgaon chapter head, I would like to answer that back to Harpreet and to other people who are all listening on the show. We've already written to the excise department, the excise commissioner. I've had a long conversation with him on the same. Right. A letter has been issued to him as well as the excise minister. Right, where we've basically requested for two things. One, that we should be at least given a time frame of next 3 months for us to fulfill our excise duties, which are the due date is 31st of this month, right? And we've asked for 3 months of time frame for that, and also we've asked them and requested them that we need another 6 months of time frame from you people to give us some moratorium on the VAT that we all have to pay, because the excise and the VAT is one ministry which takes care of both the things, right? And while verbally we have got an assurance from them that we will be this is going to be looked into, right? We're just waiting for a final reply from them on the paper for the same to happen. But be assured that the government is also equally worried about the same thing, because they understand that this is a month where there is practically zero cash flows for any business, and this is also a month where the other important things like the salaries of the employees and other things are equally important, right? And I think more important. So the government is going to give us some respite. Till that time, I would just request you to hold your horses and do not panic at all.
Okay, thank you, Harpreet. Our next question is coming along from Ashish Macy, who wants to know more about how we sort of work after with the staff, and how the work circumstances are going to be. So if we can please give the audio to him.
Hello. Hi to everyone, and good to see you all here. My question is to everyone. Heard that the social distancing should be done for the customer, but I think the same should be applied to the staff also, as we know what kind of circumstances they work under, and after that, under what circumstances they live in, the hygiene they maintain, and everything. Will that be a concern once we reopen that, or and how to take those things forward?
I think I'd like to answer a part of that question. It's a good question, Ashish. Thanks for asking. I think as restaurant owners, the first responsibility we have is to make sure people working in the restaurants are absolutely safe. And so establishing processes, daily processes of taking their temperature and recording it at least twice a day, putting in all the food safety handling and hand sanitization processes and reiterating that in the stores is extremely important, not during regular times, but not just during regular times, but also during these particular times. um, when employees have any indications of having a sore throat or a slight fever, you don't want them to hide it, because they might fear they might lose their employment or at least the earning for the day or the week. And so giving them the assurance that they can actually stay at home and not worry about losing their medical leaves or even the salaries, etc., is a massive responsibility that we have as owners of our restaurant businesses. Once that happens and you're able to ensure that you have only healthy employees working in the restaurants, that to me is the starting point to giving customers a trusted brand experience. So this responsibility is not only for the large chains, but also for smaller chains as well as individual restaurant operators, is to make sure anyone who's working in the stores is always healthy, always safe, and putting the processes in place to be able to measure that.
And I would like to just add a little bit to whatever we just listened across here. So if we could divide the restaurant into the front of the house and the back of the house, right? The back of the house, which is the kitchen part, right, is a different ball game, and the front of the house for all the large restaurants that we all operate. I think we'll be anyways having the situation of over capacity and underutilization. So if we could create a social distancing between the tables, right, I think that will help the consumer to also get the required confidence to get back to the restaurant, as well as the employees who are working, right, they'll be able to maintain that social distancing between the tables and between themselves. I think that should also
help. Okay, so next on we have Mr. Khalid. If we can have his audio, please.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you, Khalid. Go ahead.
I posted my question.
You can ask it.
I have bad internet connectivity.
Let me read it out.
Okay, his question is, Sahil, looking at how the industry is behaving, things will take some time to get back to normal. And once this lockdown ends, people will be fearful of going to crowded restaurants. In times like these, people would not want to wait. How are the aggregators developing technology to solve this problem? So Sahil, this one is for you.
Yeah, so I think what I spoke about earlier, right? I think we are building technology so that we can enable each and every restaurant partner, whether big or small, to enable them with pre-ordering, right? I think that is going to be a big sort of new consumer phenomenon where people would want to pre-order their food before they land up at their restaurant, so that when they reach there, it is ready. One could be to either take it away and eat it at home. That could be one option, or even if there is dine-in, then what we can do is that the food is ready by the time they are sitting at the table, and we reduce the table turnaround time from a restaurant perspective, because I believe going forward there will be some norms from the government, at least for 6 to 8 months, where they mandate restaurants that keep it only 50% full, or at least 3 feet distance between people, because this is something that is already happening in China, and we see Chinese restaurants actually following that, right? So I think that sort of technology will be required not only by large restaurants, but even by smaller restaurants. So I think pre-ordering will be a big thing, as well as in restaurant ordering and management of that by using digital menus by the way of that. Secondly, I think each restaurant will have to have its own online storefront in order to enable delivery for themselves. So I think enabling them for that in the long run, right, and getting that going and pushing their own customers to get food home delivered whenever required. I think that, as all of them mentioned, is going to be a significant part of the revenue structure, right? So building all these technologies for the restaurant is one part, and this is all front of the house, as Inderjeet mentioned. We're looking at even back of the house, right? So automating their supply chain, right? So that if food is getting over, let's say rice is getting over for them, can I nudge the restaurant 2 days in advance that, hey, this is getting over, and get it ordered via an Amazon B2B or some other vendor so that it's automatically delivered. So like kind of automating that entire sort of supply chain so that they can also reduce the cost of manpower, because that's going to be a lot of cost structure going forward, and also reduce and make it more contactless in that manner, right, on the back of the office side as well. So I think that is what we are working towards, that we can help them both on front of the house as well as in the back office.
Sure. Next question we are taking is from Nikhil Alung. Nikhil, are you there?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. The question is, see, I run a cloud kitchen. Now, in these times, all the aggregators, they should be very active, proactively hiring maybe more riders, and it seems they're not doing that. And at the same time, if I don't run discounts, codes, and click ads, we don't get sales. I mean, how to tackle this? Customers are getting discount added, and especially at this time, they want more discounts. I mean, I know it's little irrelevant, but during the lockdown, this thing is increasing. I face it every day, and sales are going down wherein my sales should have increased. It's delivery, it's pure delivery. So, I think Mr. Banga, if you could help me understand, if you or Sahil, anyone could tell me how to tackle this thing.
Nikhil, I don't think I'm the right person to answer this back to you, because I do not operate any home delivery formats at all. But I do understand your pain that at this moment in time you need support, and while the consumer end of the market is asking for discounts, right, because they feel that there's an oversupply of food and they have the right to ask for discounts, and at the same time the aggregators they want to maximize their revenues, right? So I understand it's a very tough time for you. The solution to this, probably I'm not the right man to answer that, because I've never run a delivery format. Maybe a Pizza Hut type of a guy could answer that back to you.
But like, just to add to that, I don't think from a consumer side there's excessive demand for delivery as well. I think delivery as well has gone down, just to correct the perception.
Drastically down.
Yeah. So even for Swiggy, Zomato, from what I know, the delivery numbers have gone down drastically because consumers are preferring to cook at home because they don't know what's the quality of the kitchen, is the hygiene being maintained. So a lot of people don't want to risk that, right? So maybe from the larger kitchens like a Domino's, Pizza Hut, etc., where there's more trust, they might continue to do it. But for a smaller single entity, I think there will be a massive drop even in this period. So I don't think there is high consumer demand even for delivery at this point, especially from smaller outlets. I think Unnat can add more from a Pizza Hut perspective.
Sorry, Sahil, can I just add one thing before we go to Unnat? I think for years as an industry, we've been battling this whole pricing issue. And I think today is a fabulous opportunity to sensitize the customer and the guest on the safety and hygiene aspects, and also sensitize them on salaries of employees and the ecosystem, and stop pushing discounts. I think we've just really been at the forefront of, giving discounts to acquire guests. And I think this is a fabulous time to really stop that precedence and talk about other aspects and call to actions rather than just pushing discounts.
I agree, absolutely. I think pushing the consumer to understand that how important is hygiene and how restaurants spend money on maintaining nice, clean kitchens will become all the more important going forward. And I think instead of pure discounting, more of value-based sort of offerings for the consumers will become important. And I think the consumers are also understanding with this situation that they need to support the restaurant industry. Like, I think we realize that, and I think we just started a campaign as well to support restaurants from a consumer perspective, where they can buy sort of future sort of vouchers for the restaurant to help restaurants get cash flow today, right? Because all of them are understanding that since restaurants have zero revenue, can we create some cash flows for the restaurants? I think all of us are trying to do that, and I think we'll have to think long and hard that how can we do this in the sort of long run, right? I think what you say is right. We'll have to figure that piece out.
Sure. So we'll take this one final question as we're almost run out of time. This one comes from a lady. Her name is Shreya Paropkari. Can we have her audio, please? Shreya, please. Or should I just read out her question? Okay, so Shreya is asking the question. This is directed to Unnat. So in the tenet of care for customers, what is the consideration towards promoting healthier food options, tying up with cause-based organizations to promote delivery? And this is something which is in general, she's asking, is in relation to scientific evidence linking the majority of pandemics to current animal production systems. So what is the opinion of the panel towards moving towards plant-based foods? And of course, more sustainable way of living in the future.
So the initiative of the initiatives that fall right now under care for customers are very, very different. They are more here and now. And the here and now is about telling customers that our brands are safe, our people are safe. And for your reassurance, we have certain processes that give you the mental comfort that anything that you do with the brand is going to be, so any interaction with the brand, whether it's on digital ecosystem or physical ecosystems, is going to be absolutely safe. The question that has been asked is of a little of different nature, and I'll try and attempt to answer that as well. The fact that see, customers are using there's a customer demand for all kinds of products, right? Whether it is meats or vegetarian or plant-based and stuff like that, there is demand for everything. The responsibility again that we have as either individual brands or part of being an association is to make sure customers get always the highest quality ingredients and the best quality products, and the processes are absolutely world class. So making sure that your supplies and your suppliers are very well audited, and there are global processes put in place to make sure things are absolutely safe from a customer standpoint, that your supply chains are robust, and cold food reaches cold and hot food reaches hot at the stores. And the same thing also reaches the customers exactly like that. There is complete temperature maintenance across the entire value chain. And also in the restaurants where the food is handled and processed, there are world-class processes to make sure that everything is absolutely safe. Now, whether customers choose to have regular meats or go to plant-based meats is a choice that they have, and as brands, we always have to be ready to offer customers those options. So that's my general answer to a very different kind of a subject. But under the care for customers, this is about the here and now, about making sure customers have this huge amount of comfort in placing an order with our stores, where they know that everything in terms of food handling or people during these times is absolutely safe.
Thanks, Unnat, for that. Anybody with thoughts on plant-based foods becoming more part of the menu? Chef, would you want to take that up? We seem to have lost him. Anybody else who wants to speak on, Ashish, you want to take this up? More plant-based food
I
menu?
think Chef has got his mic on.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to switch on my mic. Right, Ashish. So I was saying it's a phenomenon that has happened in the last couple of years, and it's growing, especially sitting here in the UK, where meat and 2 veg was the main option. That's what people preferred. I have seen a huge shift towards people going and eating plant-based food more and more. So much so that every star restaurant or every high-end restaurant has a vegan and a vegetarian menu in terms of tasting menus, which wasn't the case earlier. You landed in a 3 Michelin star restaurant and you'll be scorned upon that, why are you vegetarian, why you're sitting in my restaurant? But now it's taken with pride and love and care. and equal attention to detail. And I think that's the way forward. Lots of us will have a choice that what we want to eat. I don't think we can force the world to become complete plant-based world, because it's a different, very diverse community across the globe, and people will always have their choices. However, I think to remain sustainable and to shift the load from the earth, to be honest, and to be able to keep this planet more clean and clear for our future generations to live here, we would have to make a very conscious choice of moving towards plant-based food.
Sure. So I would now like to sort of summarize, what are the larger discussions been. First of all, thank you very much for the panelists for actually sparing time and joining us here today. Some great meaningful discussions. As Ashish mentioned, we need to take stock of our cash situations. We need to be mindful about how we are going to sort of calculate our the cash losses that we are going to face because of zero revenues, as well as the cash losses which we are going to see once the stores and lockdown is over and we're going to open. So we need to take a decision based upon all our costs that we have to bear as restaurateurs without revenue, and how much sustainability we can put towards it. It's a fair financial analysis everybody would need to make. Second thing is, of course, for restaurants, for where it is possible, of course, it will not be possible for all, is to go through the delivery model. You need to have at least some kind of business coming up to you from a delivery-based business system. And as I said, wherever it's possible, that delivery mechanism needs to be added into your business. Maybe even go forward, putting some gourmet foods and lots of other retail items which could be helpful for your business. The third thing would of course be that as far as possible, our employees are of great importance to us, to the business, and they are the ones who keep our restaurants running. So as far as possible, we should try to retain our employees. But once, of course, the lockdown becomes longer, you would need to make a fair assessment as to how many employees you can withhold and how many are you going to let go in the future. And my final one would be that, understandably, we are we cannot use the benchmark of developed countries with India to say that we will be able to get the same offerings. So we need to be mindful as to how we are going to overcome this situation without too much government help. So thank you very much once again, panelists, Indrajit, Unnat, Ashish, Chef, Atul Kochhar, Sahil, Sharad, for all joining us here today and making, at least putting some perspective. I'm sure we're all thinking alike, but it's only when you hear from somebody else that this is what the situation looks like, it gives us a testimony that we are thinking on the right path. So thank you for putting it together, and thank you very much for joining us once again.
Thank you.